we are covering environmental hazards and regulations for the California real estate exam. This is a critical topic because California has extensive disclosure laws designed to protect buyers. The exam will test your knowledge of what needs to be disclosed, when, and by whom. Let's start with lead-based paint. For any residential property built before 1978, federal law requires sellers to provide buyers with a lead-based paint disclosure form. This includes giving buyers an EPA-approved pamphlet, disclosing any known lead-based paint or hazards, and providing any available reports. A key exam point is that buyers must be given a 10-day period to conduct their own inspection, though they can waive this right. The exam might try to trick you by asking if testing is mandatory for the seller. It is not. The seller's duty is to disclose what they know. Next is asbestos, a material once used in insulation and other building materials. While federal law doesn't mandate disclosure of asbestos in building materials, California law requires sellers to disclose any known asbestos on the property. The exam often focuses on the word known. A seller isn't required to inspect for asbestos, but if they are aware of its presence, it's a material fact that must be disclosed on the transfer disclosure statement. For buildings constructed before 1979, the California Health and Safety Code requires a specific declaration of any asbestos-containing materials. Radon is another hazard tested. It's a naturally occurring radioactive gas that can enter a home from the ground. While California doesn't have a specific statute requiring radon disclosure in the same way as lead paint, sellers are still required to disclose any known environmental hazards on the transfer disclosure statement, which includes radon gas. The exam will test this as part of the seller's general duty to disclose all known material facts. Mold is a common issue, and California law considers visible mold a condition that can render a property substandard. Sellers must disclose any known mold conditions. The exam might present a scenario where a seller fixed a leak but didn't check for mold. If they are aware of past water intrusion, they must disclose it, as it could lead to mold. The key takeaway is that disclosure of past or present water issues is crucial. California's unique geology means earthquake and seismic hazards are heavily tested. The Alquist-Priolo Earthquake Fault Zoning Act is a major topic. It requires the disclosure of properties located in an earthquake fault zone. These zones are designated around active faults. The exam will expect you to know that sellers must disclose if their property is within one of these zones on the natural hazard disclosure statement. Similarly, properties in seismic hazard zones, which are areas prone to liquefaction or landslides, must also be disclosed. Flood and fire hazards are also covered under the Natural Hazard Disclosure Statement. Sellers must disclose if the property is in a special flood hazard area as designated by FEMA, or in an area of potential flooding from dam failure. For fire hazards, sellers must disclose if the property is in a state-designated, very high fire hazard severity zone. The exam will likely test your knowledge of the Natural Hazard Disclosure Statement, or NHB, which consolidates these state-mandated disclosures. Finally, let's discuss hazardous waste and underground storage tanks. Sellers must disclose any known hazardous substances that have been released on or beneath the property. This is particularly important for non-residential properties, but applies to residential sales if the seller has knowledge. Underground storage tanks, often used for heating oil, can leak and contaminate soil and groundwater, making their known presence a material fact requiring disclosure. An important exam trap is the as-is sale. Selling a property as is does not relieve the seller of their legal duty to disclose known material defects and environmental hazards. When you see an exam question about a potential hazard, the safest answer is almost always to disclose. A simple mnemonic to remember the core principle is, when in doubt, disclose it out. This approach protects the seller from future liability and aligns with California's stringent real estate laws. Your duty as an agent is to ensure your client understands and fulfills all their disclosure obligations. For free practice questions, AI-powered explanations, and more exam prep tools, visit openexamprep.com. That's openexamprep, all one word, .com.